on DD India.
Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Prasar Bharati. Coming up in the next hour, European Union agrees to open membership negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova, bypassing Hungarian objections. Top Biden advisor Jake Sullivan.
It's a very powerful political signal. It's a very powerful political decision.
Top Biden advisor Jake Sullivan meets Israel Prime Minister, urges on shifting to lower intensity campaign. Netanyahu stresses war against Hamas until absolute victory. Sullivan to meet Palestinian president today.
We are more determined than ever to continue fighting until Hamas is eliminated, until absolute victory.
India thrashed South Africa by 106 runs in 30-20 cricket match in Johannesburg. Level series 1-1. The European Union's 27 heads of state have made the historic choice to open membership negotiations with Ukraine despite vocal opposition from Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The decision puts Ukraine firmly on the long and complex road to EU membership. While on the second day of the summit on Friday, the leaders are set to discuss migration, security and defense. Alex Carrier reports from the European Council in Brussels.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has described the decision by EU leaders to open accession talks for his country as a victory for Ukraine and a victory for all of Europe. He says it will strengthen and inspire.
This is extremely important. We want to support Ukraine. It's a very powerful political signal. It's a very powerful political decision. And today and tonight, I think to the people of Ukraine, we are on their side, and this decision made by the member states is extremely important for the credibility of the European Union.
It's a decision that came quite unexpectedly. EU leaders had been locked in painstaking negotiations with Hungary, who had promised to veto opening these accession talks. Prime Minister Viktor Orban had said Ukraine is just not ready. It is too corrupt, and its vast agricultural industry may threaten European farmers. But when the moment came to make the decision, Viktor Orban was not in the room, meaning that Hungary abstained and the decision was able to go through. Moments later, Mr. Orban called it a bad decision, but EU leaders beyond that are united in saying it was a historic moment of support, a clear symbol that the European Union stands by Ukraine for as long as it takes. Alex Cadier in Brussels reporting for DD India.
Ukrainians in the capital Kyiv said on Thursday that their country deserved to be in the European Union after EU leaders agreed to open membership talks for Ukraine. Kyiv residents described the decision as a real chance and a step forward.
Ukraine deserves to be in Europe, especially with how it stands for European values. I think this is the next step towards victory for us. I would say it like this: it will definitely not be an obstacle for us.
This is a wonderful decision, and I believe that Ukraine deserved it. Still, we are all aware that meticulous and continuous work lies ahead of Ukraine in order to become a full member of the European Union.
The US welcomed the European Union's decision to open membership talks with Ukraine and Moldova. The State Department in a statement said that it also applauded the EU's decision to grant EU candidate status to Georgia and open membership negotiations with Bosnia and Herzegovina. It also added the United States continues to strongly support the EU's enlargement process, and we look forward to supporting EU candidate and prospective candidate countries as they continue critical reforms on the path to EU membership. The commander of the U.S. European Command met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Germany on Thursday and discussed continued U.S. support to meet Ukraine's most urgent requirements, according to a U.S. military statement. The commander, General Christopher Cavoli, and Zelensky also discussed ongoing U.S. and international efforts to train the Ukrainian armed forces, the statement said. Posting on social media, Zelensky added that he expected the U.S. Congress soon to adopt a decision to continue support for Ukraine against Russia's invasion. Ukraine's Air Force said Russian MiG-31K fighter jets carrying Kinzhal hypersonic missiles struck targets in central Ukraine on Thursday. Kyiv regional governor said no casualties were reported, nor damage to critical and civilian infrastructure. Russian forces used 3 Kinzhals launched from 3 fighter jets in Russia's central Tula region and shot down 1 Kinzhal missile over Kyiv region, according to Ukraine's Air Force. Overnight, Russia launched 42 drones and 6 missiles at Ukraine, with 11 people injured and buildings and warehouses damaged by falling debris. The Ukrainian military said it destroyed 41 drones. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has said Moscow is in dialogue with the United States on the issue of bringing home jailed Americans Paul Whelan and Evan Gershkovich, and the Kremlin hopes to find a solution, even though it's not easy. Putin spoke about Whelan and Gershkovich during his year-end news conference in response to a question about a recent offer the Biden administration made to secure the 2 men's release. The U.S. State Department reported it earlier this month without offering details and said Russia rejected it. U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said the U.S. has put multiple offers on the table, including one significant offer that we made as recently as a few weeks ago. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin held his 18th annual press conference together with a direct line question and answer session in Moscow. Putin said that Russia's national gross domestic product is poised to rise 3.5% by the end of 2023. Putin mentioned that Russia's financial system remains stable, with national debt decreasing. On the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Putin said the goals of the special military operation remain to strengthen border security and ensure the rights and freedoms of citizens. Russia is forced to take another measures, including military ones, as Ukraine does not wish to hold negotiations on its demilitarization, he said at the press conference. When Russia realizes its target of the special military operation, then peace will come, he added. He also expressed Russia's readiness to improve and develop relations with the United States, but said that latter's imperial thinking is a major obstacle. It is the United States and the European Union that have destroyed their own relations with Russia, said the Russian president. Shifting focus to Israel-Hamas conflict now, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Thursday to discuss the ongoing situation in Gaza. The two leaders discussed about securing the return of hostages held by Hamas terrorists and the continuation of humanitarian aid for Gaza's civilian population. Netanyahu also briefed Sullivan on regional threats, including Iranian proxies Hezbollah in Lebanon and Houthis in Yemen. With the war's consequences escalating fast, Netanyahu has so far brushed off appeals for a ceasefire, and he thanked the United States for blocking the attempts at UN to stop the fighting.
I greatly appreciate the US support for Israel in the supply of munition for the Israeli army, in blocking the attempts at the UN to stop the fighting, and in the assistance in returning our hostages. I would like to clarify, the return of our hostages is the main goal. We are not relenting in our efforts even for a moment. Even at this moment, I told our American friends, our heroic soldiers have not fallen in vain. Out of the deep pain of their having fallen, we are more determined than ever to continue fighting until Hamas is eliminated, until absolute victory.
And US President Joe Biden's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan will meet Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah on Friday about the conflict in Gaza and ensuring that the Hamas attack on Israel on October 7 is never repeated. According to senior US officials, Jake Sullivan will discuss ongoing efforts to revamp and revitalize the Palestinian Authority and reining in extremist settler violence against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. 2 weeks after a truce collapse, the Israel-Hamas conflict has entered an intense phase, with fighting now raging across the entire Gaza Strip. The ground incursion into Khan Yunis, Gaza's second city, entered a critical stage on Thursday as Israel pounded the center. Internet and phone networks across Gaza again went down on Thursday, according to the region's main telecoms company. Israel has reportedly said the current intensive phase of the conflict could be finished in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, while adding that the conflict with Hamas could last several more months. And reacting to the intense fighting, White House NSA Sullivan said the governance of the West Bank and Gaza Strip needs to be connected under a revamped and revitalized Palestinian Authority. Sullivan, who was visiting Israel and spoke in an interview with an Israeli television, said he had talked with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about Israel shifting from high-intensity military operations in Gaza to a more precise and targeted phase. Sullivan did not provide a specific timeline or elaborate on what such operations would look like, although he said Israel was expected to continue its military campaign for some time. He said occupied West Bank and the Gaza Strip need to be connected under a revamped and revitalized Palestinian Authority government. Head of UN's Gaza mission warns parts of Gaza are no longer habitable due to overcrowding and poor weather. Philip Lazarini's third visit to the region since recent fighting broke out revealed worsening conditions in Rafah. UN warns of humanitarian crisis. DD India's correspondent Sally Patterson reports for more.
UNRWA Commissioner General Felipe Lazzarini says things have gone from bad to worse in Gaza. He'd been staying in Rafah, in the south of the Strip, near the border with Egypt, a city he called the epicenter of displacement. According to the UN agency, nearly 1.9 million people, more than 85% of the population in Gaza, have been displaced since fighting began in early October. The city of Rafah has quadrupled its population, with people forced to sleep outside overcrowded UN warehouses. They've set up makeshift camps with families battling heavy rain and cold weather as winter sets in. Lazzarini said everywhere you go, people are desperate, they're hungry, and they're terrified. Aid is still only trickling into the Strip. He said some people he met hadn't eaten in 3 days. That's leading to people stopping aid trucks, grabbing food and eating it on the spot. The UNRWA chief repeated calls for an uninterrupted flow of supplies into Gaza and for an immediate ceasefire. That's something the Secretary General of the UN is also pushing for. But Israel and its allies, including the United States, say a ceasefire will give Hamas time to regroup and plan its next attack. Israel also accuses Hamas of using civilians as human shields and storing weapons in or near schools, hospitals and mosques. Sally Patterson in New York, reporting for DD India.
The U.S. Senate will vote on military aid for Ukraine and Israel next week as negotiations continue over changes to U.S. border security policy that would be tied to the funding. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has said that the Senate will delay its holiday break, which had been due to start on Friday, and convene Monday to give negotiations time to reach an agreement. Democratic President Joe Biden has been urging lawmakers to pass a supplemental aid package to provide $50 billion in new security to Ukraine as it fights Russia, as well as $14 billion for Israel as it wages war against Hamas in Gaza. Republican House of Representatives Speaker Mike Johnson, as well as Republicans in the Democratic Majority Senate, have repeatedly said they will only vote for that aid if it is paired with new controls for the U.S.-Mexico border. Finland will again shut its entire border with Russia to stop the inflow of asylum seekers, Minister of Interior Mari Rantanen said on Thursday. The new border closure will begin on Friday at 1800 GMT and last for 1 month, she said. Helsinki has accused Moscow of sending migrants to the crossings to retaliate for its decision to boost defense cooperation with the U.S., a charge the Kremlin denies. The arrival stopped when Finland shut the border in late November, but resumed on Thursday when 2 of the 8 crossings were opened, the Finnish border guard said. The Council of Europe said it was concerned about the rights of asylum seekers and asked Finland to ensure it remained possible to seek protection. Rantanen, who represents the anti-immigration Finns party, said there was no cause for human rights concerns.
Suomen itärajalla on välittömästi jatkunut.
We have been able to state that illegal entry at Finland's eastern border continued immediately. The number of migrants increased rapidly and the phenomenon accelerated faster than estimated. Several dozen people had already arrived in Finland through the Vaalimaa and Nairala border crossings during the morning. The government has today convened an extra meeting to decide on complete closure of the eastern border crossing. The closure starts tomorrow, Friday 15 December at 8 p.m. and ends on 14 January 2024.
Today is the third and final day of World Refugee Forum, which is being held in Geneva. UNHCR High Commissioner Filippo Grandi in his address highlighted that over 114 million people have been forced from their homes due to persecution, human rights violations, violence, armed conflict and public disorder, which has led to shattered dreams and disrupted lives. While warning about the great uncertainty about how much UNHCR donors, including the United States and Germany, can give in 2024, he said that he hoped that there would be funding pledges to the UN agency, which has a $400 million shortfall for 2023. In this event, more than 300 refugee advocates are attending, discussing the urgent refugee crisis. This is the largest gathering to focus on refugee issues and aims to address the immense challenges facing both host and transit nations as a result of the global refugee crisis. Thousands of Serbs rally in Belgrade to support pro-democratic initiative Pro-Glas ahead of Sunday's parliamentary election. The group is critical of the current government and includes intellectuals and public figures. The upcoming election will be the fifth since 2012, and a recent poll puts the SNS, the party of President Vučić, in the lead. Vučić previously quit as chairman of the SNS after mass shootings, but retains control over party policies.
We toured 17 cities, traveled 5,000 kilometers, talked to people, and what we can tell you tonight is that Serbia has begun to awake. Serbia is not the same country as it was 2 years ago, nor it is the same country as it was yesterday. Serbia's awakening is underway. We are not sure whether it has woken up enough, but we will find out on December 17.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. Guyana and Venezuela agree to avoid any escalation of conflict. US Congress passes huge $886 billion defense budget for 2024. A New York State Court of Appeals denies Donald Trump's bid to overturn a gag order.
Infertility epidemic beginning to slowly engulf the human race. Get the answer on Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India. What is China's real Belt and Road Initiative game plan? Is it all about world domination, and is its end game nearing? Know it all on Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and Guyana and Venezuela have agreed to avoid any escalation of conflict amid a recent heightening of tensions over an oil-rich disputed border area. The decision was taken during a meeting between presidents of Venezuela and Guyana on Thursday. Disagreement over a region of Essequibo has run for decades, but Venezuela revived its claim, including to offshore areas in recent years after major oil and gas discoveries. The dispute is before the International Court of Justice, through a final ruling could be years away. Speaking in favor of which, Guyanese president said that both sides are committed to ensuring their region remains peaceful.
We are a peace-abiding country and people. We have no other ambition than to pursue the peaceful coexistence with Venezuela and every country in this region. This matter is determined by the ICJ, and that the outcome of this matter at the ICJ be respected by all.
Voters in Venezuela this month rejected the court's jurisdiction and backed the creation of a new state in the referendum. Guyana has questioned the vote's turnout and said its land border is not up for discussion. And the two leaders met at the airport in Kingstown in St. Vincent and the Grenadines alongside representatives from CARICOM, the Caribbean Political and Economic Union, Brazil, the United Nations, and the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States. Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines read the joint statement after the meeting. Listen in.
Guyana and Venezuela declared as follows. 1. Agreed that Guyana and Venezuela directly or indirectly will not threaten or use force against one another in any circumstances, including those consequential to any existing controversies between the two states. 2. Agreed that any controversies between the two states will be resolved in accordance with international law, including the Geneva Agreement dated February 17, 1966. Agreed to continue dialogue on any other pending matters of mutual importance to the two countries. 6. Agreed that both states will refrain, whether by words or deeds, from escalating any conflict or disagreement arising from any controversy between them.
The United States will have its presidential election this year, with Democrat Joe Biden seeking re-election. He is likely to face former President Donald Trump, expected to be the Republican nominee. However, Trump faces legal challenges related to his previous election actions. DD India's Nick Harper in Washington provides a preview of the upcoming election and what to expect before November.
2024 is expected to be a dramatic year for US politics, but perhaps not this dramatic. The rise of AI images like these, of events that never happened, could make separating fact from fiction even harder during this election year. But one thing that's beyond doubt, Donald Trump's upcoming trials have not lessened support among his voters.
It doesn't matter that he's charged. It doesn't matter what courts seem to say. His base is with him. And that base won't go away unless he's convicted. And even then, if he's convicted, who knows? We don't know what will happen to his base.
The former president is facing 4 criminal trials this year. Charges include his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election results, which culminated in the January 6, 2021 attack on the US Capitol. Time in court will reduce time on the campaign trail, where he's vying to win the Republican Party nomination to challenge Joe Biden. State votes begin in mid-January, and polls already suggest Trump is comfortably ahead of the other Republican candidates.
There's probably a lot of discouragement among Trump's challengers. He's at 51%. Of course, that means half the people want somebody else, and so maybe somebody can rally some of these supporters, but that gets difficult here in the holiday season.
The state of the economy, jobs, immigration and abortion access are all expected to be key election issues. And the new battlefield in Gaza has created a political minefield for President Biden. The rising humanitarian crisis for Palestinians and Washington's unwavering support for Israel's military campaign has some progressive Democrats saying they can no longer support Biden. Josh Paul quit his job at the State Department in protest of the conflict and predicts it will hurt Biden at the ballot box.
I think it will cost them politically. I think there is a disconnect between where the majority of the American public are and where the administration is and where many in Congress are. And I think that these series of events have really crystallized that disconnect. That said, I don't know that it will lead to any change in the immediate term in terms of America's posture towards the provision of lethal arms to Israel.
Continued funding for Ukraine could also divide voters. Biden is pushing for billions of dollars in additional support, money many Republicans say should be spent at home rather than on a foreign conflict.
There's still a long while until November's presidential election, when a Biden-Trump rematch is expected. Before then, there'll be many months of partisan politics and courtroom drama. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
The U.S. Congress passed a defense policy bill on Thursday that allows $886 billion in annual spending for the military and also approves policies such as aid for Ukraine and pushback against China in the Indo-Pacific region. The bill that was passed by bipartisan support in both House of Representatives and Senate will now be sent to the White House for President Joe Biden's signature. The package authorizes $28 billion, which is about 3% more than the previous financial year. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese hailed US Congress for authorizing the sale of nuclear submarines to another country for the first time, allowing the AUKUS defense partnership of Australia, the US and Britain to go ahead. More than two-thirds of the US House of Representatives voted in favor of a defense policy bill on Thursday that included a record $886 billion in annual military spending and authorized policies such as aid for Ukraine and pushback against China in the Indo-Pacific. The AUKUS pact to develop nuclear-powered submarines and other high-technology weapons is Australia's most expensive defense project with a $244 billion price tag over 3 decades, but relied on US approval to share sensitive technology. A New York State Court of Appeals, the highest court in the state, has denied Donald Trump's bid to overturn a gag order that restricted him from publicly talking about the court staff in connection with the New York civil fraud trial. The judge overseeing the case issued the gag order on October 3rd after Trump posted a photo of Judge's law clerk and Democrat leader Chuck Schumer and called her Schumer's girlfriend. The judge said that the court received multiple threats from Trump supporters after the post. Brazil's Congress on Thursday overturned a veto by President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva so it can reinstate legislation that undergoes protections of indigenous peoples' land rights. The decision sets up a new battle between lawmakers and the country's top court on the matter. Both federal deputies and senators voted by a wide margin to support a bill that argues the date Brazil's constitution was promulgated, October 5, 1988, is the deadline by which indigenous peoples had to be physically occupying or fighting legally to reoccupy territory in order to claim land allotments. Supporters of the bill argued that it was needed to provide legal security to landowners and accused indigenous leaders of pushing for an unlimited expansion of their territories. And a 3.2 magnitude earthquake hit Mexico City on December 14, causing damage and causing chaos as well. The earthquake registered by Mexico's National Seismological Service followed other small quakes that hit the capital on December 12, but no damages or fatalities were reported. China has issued its severest yet blizzard warning as particularly bad winter snowstorms hit the capital Beijing and much of the north of the country. DD India's Andrew Wood reports from Hong Kong.
Well, it's been snowing in Beijing for a couple of days now. Forecasters reckon that it could get colder. Perhaps the temperature could fall as far as -16 Celsius. In other cities, such as Harbin in the north of the country, much closer to Mongolia and Siberia, the forecasters reckon the temperature could drop as low as -27 degrees Celsius. And this wave of cold weather is expected to move south over the next 24 to 48 hours. Already there are reports across the north of the country of planes being delayed, schools closing because of very low temperatures and not enough electricity or heating fuel. This does seem to be a problem sweeping across the country. Now, of course, it's not unusual for China to be cold during the winter, but these do seem to be particularly chilly times for China, and the forecasters reckon that records may well be broken. I mean, it has actually been a pretty extreme year for China overall for weather. Back in January, there were ultra-low temperatures. In the summer, there were ultra-high temperatures. Beijing baked at temperatures above 100 Fahrenheit for many, many days in a row. And then suddenly there was bad rain because of typhoon, and there have been a lot of typhoons hitting the coast of China this year. Typhoon Doksuri made landfall and then carried on. It carried on after making landfall. Most typhoons usually fizzle out, but this one carried on for another 2,000 kilometers and reached as far as Beijing and actually caused some of the worst flooding on record there and the highest rainfall on record. So yes, it has been a very difficult year, and increasingly, of course, more and more people are believing that these extremes in temperature and weather are due to climate change. In Hong Kong, I'm Andrew Wood reporting for DD India.
All right, let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. 3 people in Denmark and 1 in the Netherlands were arrested on suspicion of preparing a terrorist attack following a coordinated cross-border police effort. The suspects' motives are unknown, but the threat towards Denmark intensified after anti-Islam activists damaged Quran copies. Danish police are increasing their public presence, particularly in Copenhagen and around Jewish localities. United Airlines flight attendants, represented by the Association of Flight Attendants, protested outside LaGuardia Airport in New York, with the union expected to protest at 19 airports nationwide to pressure contract negotiations. JR has launched Chronicles of Miami, an innovative art installation that combines technology and storytelling. The app allows viewers to identify mural subjects and hear their personal stories. This technology breaks down traditional barriers between artist and audience, making JR's work more accessible and participatory. A row has erupted in Italy over the creation of carbonara pasta sauce, a classic Roman dish. Food historian and author Lucia Cesari faced online abuse after presenting the original recipe, which is claimed to be made with Swiss Gruyere cheese, garlic and scrambled eggs. This is part of a wider trend of Italians recognizing food heresy, such as pairing pasta with ketchup or adding pineapple to pizza. A large-scale public art installation in Manhattan's Freedom Plaza features 19,000 low-voltage stem spares that slowly shift color. The installation, created by British artist David Attenborough, is open to public and will be on view for 12 months, opening December 15. Chile's Buin Zoo celebrated Christmas early, with animals like rhinos and leopards opening their presents. Cats received fresh meat, while red pandas received fruit. The presents were wrapped in boxes or given as part of a Christmas adornment to keep the animals interacting. And still to come on DD India News Hour. BJP Legislature Party leader Bhajan Lal Sharma to take oath as Chief Minister of Indian state of Rajasthan today. '20th Handcrafts Trade Fair and 18th Handicrafts competition underway in Kathmandu, Nepal. And India's Assam State Zoo and Botanical Garden is taking precautionary measures to keep animals warm during winters.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and let's have a look at the headlines once again. European Union agrees to open membership negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova, bypassing Hungarian objections. Top Biden advisor Jake Sullivan meets Israel Prime Minister, urges on shifting to lower intensity campaign. Netanyahu stresses war against Hamas until absolute victory. Sullivan to meet Palestinian president today. India thrashed South Africa by 106 runs in third T20 cricket match in Johannesburg, level series 1-1. The Philippines is contingency planning for an escalation of hostilities in the South China Sea, including a scenario where crew repel Chinese forces attempting to board Philippine vessels. Ties between the two countries have deteriorated this year after several collisions and repeated standoffs near disputed features of the South China Sea. The Philippines has taken a tougher line with China this year, boosting military ties with United States and increasing its security engagement with other Western powers. Let's look at the latest between these two countries.
China and the Philippines over the past few months have had several confrontations in a disputed area of the South China Sea. And now China has condemned Canada's support for the Philippines over what it said were violations of China's sovereignty in the South China Sea. According to a statement by the Chinese embassy spokesperson in Canada, it said the South China Sea is the common home of countries in the region and should not become a hunting ground for Canada, the United States and other countries to pursue their geopolitical interests. Canada, in a statement, condemned Chinese action on the 9th and the 10th of December in South China Sea, saying that this poses a serious threat to regional peace and stability. China claims nearly the entire South China Sea as its own and has repeatedly said Philippines vessels were encroaching on its national sovereignty. On recent confrontation in the South China Sea, United Kingdom also backed the Philippines, saying that the tactics of the Chinese vessels were unsafe and escalatory in the South China Sea. The Foreign Office said in a statement that the UK opposes any action which raises tensions, including harassment, unsafe conduct and intimidation tactics which increase the risk of miscalculation and threaten regional peace and stability. Meanwhile, the national security advisors of Philippines, United States and Japan urged China to refrain from further provocative actions. In a trilateral phone call on Wednesday, they voiced their concern about Beijing's recent dangerous and unlawful moves in the West Philippine Sea. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, Patrick Folk joins us with more from Singapore. Patrick, the Philippines says it's preparing contingency plans. What more can you tell us?
Well, the Philippines says it's brainstorming it, it's wargaming it, and it's prepared for any contingency that may occur. There's no secret there has been an increase in hostility between the two sides in recent weeks, and perhaps it comes as no surprise that the Philippines is planning ahead for it. A senior military official has said that includes the scenario, as you mentioned, of Chinese forces boarding Philippine vessels. It's something that they say that they've been training for in war game exercises because the Philippines will not allow that to happen. They also said that they are considering what other coercive actions the Chinese might take. They've seen water cannon, they've seen ramming, and now they are questioning what other steps China could take short of an armed attack of any sort. Now, that will be a concern to America in particular. It has repeatedly said that it will defend its treaty ally, although the Pentagon said recently that that does not extend to unsafe operations like the firing of water cannon and like collisions. But if it goes any further than that, then it could really be a test for how far Washington's support for the Philippines goes.
Okay, Patrick, and there have also been reports of some cooperation between Beijing and Manila. What's about that?
Yeah, you might say this is a rare sign of cooperation between the two sides, given the current climate. But reports have said that China and the Philippines have jointly busted a gambling ring involving 180 Chinese nationals. That took place in October, where the two sides raided an offshore gambling company, and on Thursday it repatriated the Chinese citizens involved. The Chinese embassy in the Philippines said that it would continue to support any such law enforcement activities, but it's hard to say whether or not this is any sign of thawing of ties between the Philippines and China. there's a lot to say that this really doesn't suggest that anything's going to change with regards to the situation in the South China Sea, but still it is an indication that the two sides are able to cooperate in areas where it makes sense for both of them.
All right, on that note, thank you so much, Patrick Folk, for joining in. The alleged main conspirator of the parliament security breach, Lalit Mohan Jha, was arrested by Delhi police on Thursday. He was absconding since the incident took place. Police is currently interrogating him. Earlier, the Patiala House Court of Delhi sent the 4 other accused to 7 days of police remand. The 4 accused persons are Neelam, Anmol, Sagar Sharma and Manoranjan. The Delhi police has registered a case under the stringent Unlawful Activities Prevention Act in the case. And in the Indian Parliament, following activities have been scheduled for 15th of December. In lower house Lok Sabha, there is a discussion on the Post Office Amendment Bill 2023 will continue. After the passage of the bill, Union Home Minister Amit Shah will propose to discuss and pass 3 criminal laws. Apart from this, MPs will also present private member bills in both the houses of Parliament. And DD India correspondent Vikas Sarthi joins us for more. Vikas, what latest are you getting for us?
Right, Siddha. So you just mentioned that Lok Sabha is expected to take up bills related to our criminal justice system, where 3 new bills have been introduced. But what we saw that these bills, in fact, were lined up yesterday also. But throughout the day, there was disruption in the Lok Sabha, particularly, and in the Rajya Sabha as well, Siddharth. And despite the suspension of number of opposition MPs, still the opposition parties are continuously disrupting proceedings in both the houses. In fact, in the Rajya Sabha, we also saw that TMC MP Derek O'Brien was suspended by the chairman for remaining part of the session. But the strategy of the opposition is again to disrupt the parliament proceedings in both the house over the security breach issue. The chairs in both the houses have clearly mentioned that internal security within the house is a matter related to respective secretariats, and it has nothing to do with the Home Ministry or the external agencies. The internal security is a matter of introspection for secretariat itself, and a high-level investigation has already been ordered. But again, on the same issue, opposition MPs are creating ruckus in both the houses, and it is not very likely that there will be a change of instance in their approach to deal with this issue.
Okay. Vikas, could you give us some update on Parliament security breach, as in what latest has happened so far?
Right, Siddharth, you just mentioned that these 4 accused were produced before the Patiala House Court yesterday, and the lawyer representing the Delhi police was of the view that it's a well-planned conspiracy to spread a terror among the MPs, and because of that, these people have been charged with UAPA section. Recently, the main conspirator, which Lalit Mohan Jha, he yesterday surrendered before the Delhi police, and we expect that he will also be produced before the same court and will be given a 7-day police custody like the other accused as well. But police still have some time to interrogate him, and maybe later in the day he will be produced before the Patiala House Court, or maybe tomorrow also. There is an expectation that police has enough time to interrogate him, since the procedure is that once a person is declared arrested, he must be produced before a competent court within 24 hours. So first, Delhi police is interrogating him right now.
All right, thanks for analysis, Vikas. And back home, India's ruling political party BJP's leader Bhajan Lal Sharma will take oath as Chief Minister of Indian state of Rajasthan on Friday. The state governor Kalraj Mishra will administer the oath to Mr. Sharma. 2 Deputy Chief Ministers Diya Kumari and Prem Chand Bairwa will also take oath. The swearing-in ceremony will take place at the Albert Hall in Jaipur. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah and BJP National President JP Nadda will attend the swearing ceremony. The head of state of Oman, Sultan Haitham bin Tariq, will be arriving in New Delhi today for his 3-day state visit. He comes with a high-level delegation of senior ministers and officials. Upon his arrival, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar will call upon Oman Sultan in the national capital today. The Oman Sultan will be coming to India on the invitation of President Draupadi Murmu and will be received by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Murmu at the Rashtrapati Bhavan for a ceremonial welcome on Saturday. He will hold bilateral discussions with Prime Minister, who will also host a luncheon in his honor. President of Nepal, Ramchandra Paudel, inaugurates the 28th Handicrafts Trade Fair and 18th Handicrafts Competition in Kathmandu. The fair is open for public from December 14 to 18 to promote local handicraft, and there are 3 pavilions with 130 stalls. It displays hemp items, stonework, metal sculpting, handloom, paper art, Pauba paintings, Thanga painting, pot art and bamboo art, and much more. The president emphasized that the Nepali handicraft goods cannot be easily copied, as these are the indigenous products based on the ancestral skills. It is expected that the fair would record more than 100,000 visitors. According to organizers, Nepal is exporting handicraft worth rupees 12 billion in a year to over 60 countries. And let's take a look at other stories making news. According to a statement released by Information and Broadcasting Ministry, Viksit Bharat Sankalp Yatra has reached a monumental milestone, with participants exceeding 20 million in less than a month. The Yatra reached nearly 60,000 Gram Panchayats, with more than 16 million Indian citizens taking the Sankalp to work towards striving for a Viksit Bharat by 2047. India's Minister of State for External Affairs V. Muralidharan submitted a reply in Indian Parliament House Rajya Sabha that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been conferred with the highest national awards of 14 countries since 2014 in recognition of his leadership at bilateral, regional and global levels. PM Modi also received the highest environmental award of the United Nations in 2018. Thousands of devotees attended the Kanduri festival at Nagaur Dargah in the South Indian state of Tamil Nadu. The festival is celebrated from the 1st to the 14th day of Saint Shahul Hamid's death anniversary during the Islamic month of Jamatul Akhir. Saint Hamid was the revered 13th generation descendant of Saint Sufi. People were seen flocking to the Dargah at night. Visuals from the spot showed elaborate lighting, parades and grand tableaus on the streets. As winter knocks in the northeastern India, the authority of Assam State Zoo and Botanical Garden has taken precautionary measures to keep animals warm during the winter. The zoo authority has installed heaters, used blankets, arranged high-powered electric bulbs to keep the animals and birds in the enclosure warm in the biting chill in the State Zoo in Guwahati. Still to come on DD India News Hour. European Central Bank decides to leave its key interest rates unchanged. Elon Musk faces legal challenge from US SEC over Twitter takeover. Stay with us to know more. And in sports, Rebecca Welch ready to ink history as the first female referee in Premier League's Fulham versus Burnley on December 23.
What is China's real Belt and Road Initiative game plan? Is it all about world domination, and is its end game nearing? Know it all on Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India. Is a silent infertility epidemic beginning to slowly engulf the human race? Get the answer on Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India. What is China's real Belt and Road Initiative game plan? Is it all about world domination, and is its end game nearing? Know it all on Connecting the Dots every Friday at 8 p.m. IST on DD India. You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Siddharth Bharadwaj.
And now, drug makers in U.S. are soon going to be penalized. U.S. President Joe Biden said his administration will subject dozens of drug makers to penalties for raising prices on certain drugs higher than the inflation rate.
But we're now fighting back. As part of our law, which passed last year, drug companies can raise prices more than, if they raise prices more than inflation, they'll have to pay back the difference between inflation, has it gone up, and the price they charge. And that means consumers will pay less as well. They're going to save taxpayers money and discourage companies from raising prices in the first place.
U.S. stocks ended firmer on Thursday, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average notching its second straight record high close. There is optimism among investors that borrowing rates will decrease next year following a dovish pivot by the Federal Reserve. The S&P 500 also closed higher, gaining 0.26%, while the Nasdaq Composite gained 0.19%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose to 0.43%. Asian shares hit a four-month peak on Friday as sharp declines in the dollar and the U.S. yields extended the Fed-fueled rally, but pushback on rate cuts from central banks in Europe may deal a blow to the global pivot hopes. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan rallied 1.3% to the highest since early August and was up 3% for the week. Japan's Nikkei jumped 1.2%, heading for a weekly gain of 2.5%. Battered Chinese blue chips rose 0.8% to pull away from a 5-year low, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index surged 3%. Argentine Security Minister announced on Thursday that force will be used to remove protest blockades just days after new government announced tough austerity measures. Patricia Bullrich said federal forces will be mobilized when protests disrupt traffic, and those responsible for the demonstrations would be sanctioned with operational costs of police intervention. The security protocol followed an announcement earlier this week of the economic shock measures aimed at fixing the country's worst crisis in decades. Similar to the US Fed's move, the European Central Bank, or the ECB, on Thursday declined to leave its key interest rates unchanged. The interest rates on the main refinancing operations, the marginal lending facility and the deposit facility, will all remain unchanged at 4.5%, 4.75% and 4% respectively. In a statement, the bank said the Governing Council is determined to ensure that inflation returns to its 2% medium-term target in a timely manner. It further said that based on its current assessment, the Governing Council considers that the key ECB interest rates are at levels that, maintained for a sufficiently long duration, will make a substantial contribution to this goal. Compared with the September projections, the ECB has now revised the inflation expectations for the Eurozone down to 5.4% in 2023 and 2.1% in 2024. Despite the recent decline of inflation in the Eurozone, the bank cautioned that while inflation has dropped in recent months, it's likely to pick up again temporarily in the near term. The bank expects economic growth in the Eurozone to pick up from 0.6% in 2023 to 0.8% in 2024. As inflation in the Eurozone has been dropping at a pace faster than expected and interest rates remain high, traders and institutions expect the ECB to cut rates in 2024. Elon Musk faces legal challenge from U.S. Security and Exchange Commissioner over Twitter takeover. They want him to testify regarding public statements and paperwork for the buyout. DD India's Caroline Malone reports on the developing situation.
Another legal challenge for the world's richest man as a judge rules he has to testify again. The Security and Exchange Commission, the top US markets regulator, is looking into his $44 billion takeover of Twitter, now X. He first disclosed he'd purchased stock in the company in April 2022. He gave the SEC documents and then testified via video conference. They received new paperwork and said they wanted him to testify again, and he said no. So they sued Musk in October to try and get him to testify. But his lawyers advised against it and said last month the SEC's pursuit of Mr. Musk has crossed the line into harassment. Well, there have been many years of animosity between the SEC and Musk, who's the owner of X, Tesla and SpaceX, since 2018, when he tweeted he had funding secured to take his electric car maker private. That also led to a shareholder lawsuit. But ultimately, Musk was found not liable for misleading investors. Well, Tesla is still the world's most valuable automaker. But now Musk is being compelled to testify again about Twitter. All this at a time when the company is $13 billion in debt and is losing advertiser revenue. Caroline Malone in Washington for DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour, and time now for sport. And in cricket, Indian skipper Surya Kumar Yadav produced 100 to help India win over Proteas. India registered a comprehensive 106-run series levelling win over South Africa in the third and final T20. Surya Kumar's 100 of 56 balls and Yashasvi Jaiswal's fluent 60 of 41 balls carried India to 201 for 7 after the visitors were asked to bat first. Indian bowlers also managed to hit better lengths to bundle out South Africa for 95 in 13.5 overs. Kuldeep Yadav has ended with figures of 5 for 17. Ravindra Jadeja clinched 2 wickets. Both the teams will lock horns next in one-day internationals on December 17th. Around 1,400 top para-athletes from around the country are competing at the Median Khelo India Para Games 2023. On the day 6 of the multi-sport event, athletes will fight in para-archery, football, para-table tennis, para-shooting, para-powerlifting. So far, Haryana topped the medal tally with 34 gold, 36 silver and 18 bronze medals. Uttar Pradesh are second on the medal table with 24 gold, 17 silver and 9 bronze, followed by Tamil Nadu with 17 golds. Rebecca Welch will become the first female referee to officiate a Premier League match. Rebecca will take charge of Fulham's home game against Burnley on December 23. The Professional Game Match Officials Limited confirmed the appointment. Welch has been a trailblazer for female referees and last month was the 4th official for Fulham versus Manchester United in the Premier League, the first female to fulfill that role. All right, and that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Prasar Bharati from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.